It seems that Skinwalkers have become the new boogeyman in recent times. It seems no matter where you go, you can't escape stories of these creepy creatures running around taunting people. Welcome back to the swamp, my friends. It's good to see you made it back for another episode. Today we're going to be sharing stories from viewers who sent in their allegedly true encounters with what they claim to be skinwalking creatures. If you have a story that you would like to share in a future video, whether it be with these skinwalking beasts or something else entirely, be sure to submit your story at swampdweller.net or the email you can find in the description down below. I would love to share your story with everyone here in the swamp. It's stories like yours that help keep this channel going. Now, sit back, relax, and get ready for scares aplenty. Hello, my name is AR. I'm 14, and for you to understand my story, I will have to take you back to where it began in 2017. My mother and my father went through a rough divorce, and the death of my great-grandfather really hit me hard. I couldn't think of anything worse to happen to me. Well, that was before my mom's countless boyfriends and drugs came along, but that is not important to the story. One day, at my father's girlfriend's house, my father came up to me, my sister, Jay, and my friend G. My father showed us a house that was absolutely amazing to me and them, and later that day we went and saw the house. We were greeted by this older lady, who let us in and showed us all around the house. I looked into this room, and in there, behind the chair, was a dark figure that was just smiling at me. I was getting nauseous, so I went back to where the others were, and the thing was gone. Now, speed up a couple of months, and everything is moved into our new home. This is around the time where I start to get interested in skinwalkers and Wendigo stories on Swamp Dweller's channel, and when more paranormal stuff starts happening. It's not just inside of my house though. The first incident, I'm inside, and I hear growling from my closet. In the second incident, I wake up to a bag of chips being thrown across my room. The third incident, now, this incident happens when my cousin Kay, my sister Kayla, and her friend Alice all come over. So, we start this incident off by Alice and Kay tricking us by fake ghost, and that was until I found a red hand with a claw-like appendage on a mirror in G's room. We later came to find out that that room was super haunted. G no longer wanted to sleep in there. Incident 5 occurred with Kay and the others again. It's been a couple of months since my father and stepmother got married, and my 13th birthday was just around the corner. We were messing around with the supernatural again. Now I have a fully automatic BB gun, but I now know that after the stories I've heard, that it wouldn't have done anything. So my sister starts to provoke the thing that later gives me nightmares. We were out in our backyard, and we were basically just trying to summon stuff by speaking it into existence, if you know what I mean. I was getting scared, and so were the others, because we just felt like we were being stared at from the woods. Suddenly, my sister, seemingly being influenced by something not human, says that we should all go into the field and become one with them. Freaked out, we decide this is not a good idea, so we go inside, and finally, we get her to come in with us. Probably a month later, my cat goes missing, and we can't find it anywhere. At night, we can hear my cat's growls right outside of our window, but every time we go out there with a light, there's nothing to be seen. Now let's start what's been happening in 2020. Now, this still doesn't make sense to me, but it just happened this weekend. To start off, I broke a lamp on accident, but the next day when I woke up, it's like I was in a different universe or something, because my lamp was fixed and all the stuff in my room was now in different locations. My lizard cages would even disappear and then show back up the next day. I don't understand this much, but I'm going to keep searching for stuff like this. I don't know if this is a skinwalker, but I kind of feel like it might be. My name is Aiden, and my story takes place when I was 8, 10, and 11 years old. I live in Farmington, New Mexico. I live on a Navajo reservation. My great-grandmother is Hopi. Therefore, she knew all of the stories of her ancestors in the Navajo. Sure, the Hopi people and Navajo people lived in the same place and shared many of the same stories. They were never the same people in general, though. Hopi people tend to have more stories of encounters with Wendigos than the Navajo. As I was saying, my grandmother was Hopi, and I was German. I got my German from my father, and a little bit from my mother. Therefore, my great-grandmother taught me almost everything I know about Wendigos. I had come from a long line of Hopi people, so she figured it was only right that I know. I was around 5 years old when she would always tell me that Wendigos were tall, flesh-eating monsters that had only a craving for people. She would also tell me that Wendigos would prey on children if they really wanted to, but I was safe because she said that I was a pure child and would never get hurt. But she could never be more wrong. Fast forward to me being 8 years old, and I live with my mom, uncle, and younger cousin. We lived near a huge park that we would all go to sometimes for fun. It was now midsummer and the four of us were taking a walk through the old pathway that was rarely visited by anyone. My mom and uncle thought it was best to walk down this way because it would just be us. While we were walking down, I remember hearing what had sounded like hooves and grunts behind me. I would always turn around only to see trees though. As young as I was, I had immediately gotten scared, and I had chosen to say nothing. We were then at the bridge, looking down, dropping dry corn for the ducks that were under us. My mom's uncle and cousin were facing one way, and I was facing the other. I had eventually run out of corn, so I decided to just stand there and look at my surroundings. I almost immediately began to think of my grandmother's stories as I thought I had seen a tall shadow with what seemed to be antlers and a skull facing me behind the tree. I was so scared. I made eye contact with this thing for what seemed like hours, but was really only a few seconds before I went to my mom and told her that something scary was watching us. She didn't believe me and just turned back around, shaking her head, smiling. I ran back over to my spot, seeing that it was gone. I could have sworn I heard its cry as we were driving away from the park. It scared me. I thought nothing of it until 2 years later. My grandmother and I decided to take a drive down through the back roads around the Aztecs. It was a peaceful place. Along the way, we came across a bunch of trees. It had to have been at least 30 minutes of driving through when I saw it. A tall, slim shadow with antlers and a skull smiling at me as we drove by. I only saw it for a split second before I asked my grandmother if she had seen it too. She said no in a confused voice and kept driving. The thought of its smile scared me for about another year or so, which was when I had seen it again. I was laying in bed asleep before I felt the room become cold. I was going to get up and turn on the heater, only to find out that I could not move. I was sweating, which was impossible since the room was so cold. I then opened my eyes to see the scariest thing I had ever seen. A tall, slim figure with antlers and a skull face smiling at me in the farthest corner of my room. The room was filled with a smell of rotten meat, and it almost made me gag. I could feel I was sweating even more as the room got colder and colder. All of a sudden it ran at me and climbed over, still smiling as it breathed onto my face. I wanted to scream, but I just couldn't. Its eyes began glowing a bright red as its smile grew even bigger. It then raised its hand. Its nails grew even longer. It had then thrown its hand down like it was going to slice open my throat until I was shaken awake by my mom, asking me what was wrong. Before I ran to the bathroom and threw up as the thought of the awful smell came back to me. I am now 13, and I still see things from time to time. My mom and grandma had sent me into a therapy because they thought my obsessive behavior was not healthy. I have moments and episodes of seeing it, but I've never had anything serious. Thank you for listening, and I hope you share my story. As a disclaimer, I'm a pagan, so there may be some bias ahead, and I do apologize for that. I live in the middle of nowhere, the southern part of Ohio. My nearest neighbor is over a mile away, and I can take about 50 steps and be in the woods. Despite this, I've never had to deal with coyotes and raccoons because of my husky. I 100% believe in the supernatural and spirits, so I keep dream catchers on the entry of my home, and I keep my windows salted. But I've got a roommate who is about 40% Navajo, and I listen to anything he says when it comes to Native American spirits, and after this encounter, I've been sure to study up. So, it was 2018, and the summer was going great. Now that it's fall, I'm back to driving the bus of high schoolers to school every morning and every afternoon. But there was a new kid who gave off some very bad vibes. I wear a quartz on my neck, and if it gets hot randomly, I know something around me is bad. And this kid always made it hot. But I never figured out why. Well, I never had proof. It was about October. I was hyped to go trick-or-treating with my family. I still go just because I love their costumes, and I was up really late making some repairs when I felt my quartz get hot. So naturally I stopped and checked outside when I saw a floodlight flick on. There was a tall, 8-foot skinny, bluish-gray creature with knife-like claws and teeth. The worst thing, though, was his eyes. Black pits, as dark as night, with only 2 red pinpricks as pupils. I am on the 2nd floor, and it looked like this creature could reach up and grab me through the window. I yelled for my roommate and he saw it too. He grabbed his prayer beads. I grabbed my silver thread and my amethyst. For those who don't know, an amethyst converts negative energy into positive energy, and this is my go-to for negative spirits or creatures. We didn't leave the house, but we continued our prayers. The eventual rising of the sun came and the creature fled. It left no tracks, no damaged brush, and when we looked back at the footage from our floodlight camera, it showed the creature as a shadow, and a glimpse of it running. I picked up the kids, and when the bad vibe kid got on, he flipped me off. Now, I've never seen or spoken to him more than a good morning or a good evening, but I've never trusted him since. And after my roommate saw him when I was training Jim to be a bus driver, he said that the kid was some sort of shaman of the dark arts. I've doubled down on cameras and planted toadstool around my house too, and all I ever hear now are wailing screams from that part of the woods. It's creepy, but I guess I'll learn to deal with it. So first off, I would like to say this is 100% true. Now weirdly, while this story involves me, I didn't really even witness anything. So some pretext. I've been vacationing at private campgrounds my entire life. My family owns property in the Mohawk Trails not too far from Heath, Massachusetts. Beautiful land, historic property. Everywhere you go you can see stone structures and property lines dating all the way back to the time of the Mohawk Indians. Like I said, I had been camping there my whole life and still go. Nothing ever happened, paranormal at least, till this time. Go back for about 5 years. My brother still calls this my Skinwalker story, although I'm not totally convinced. It is weird though. The 5 years ago, me, my brother, and my 2 cousins were camping for a weekend. It was very calm and very peaceful. I was at the private lake fishing off the dock, not catching anything good honestly. I caught a pickerel and tossed it into the woods, then I continued fishing. Suddenly I hear my name called. It came from the right side of the dock a good distance away. Now, where the dock is, if I looked right, I could see an expanse of land that wraps around the lake, but there were trees and shrubs blocking my view of the path. That's where the voice was coming from. I recognized it as my little brother, so I called back, "I'm on the dock." I see him around the corner and stare at me bewildered. He looks back into the woods and back at me, so I ask him what's up. "Were you just in the woods, like running through the woods?" He looked bewildered. No. How could I be there and be back here so quickly?" I replied. He looked back into the woods and then back at me again and says, "Dude, I just saw you there, but you were running that way." He points back in the direction he came from, but I couldn't hear twigs snapping or leaves rustling, that's the weird part, he said. And mind you, back then I was about 290 pounds. I was a big guy. I'm now down to 210 and even am in the military, proud to say, but that's beside the point. Now, remember how I said I threw a fish in the woods? I then realized I could no longer hear it flopping around anymore, and I threw it around 5 minutes prior. So I go to look, and it's gone. I searched for a 30-foot radius. It was just gone, and there was no sign of animal life coming through and grabbing it. So that was very odd, and to this day my brother tells the story. But then, that same day, my mother comes up to me at our site and asks, "Josh, did you go to the female shower room in the rec hall?" Obviously I didn't do this. She was upset and I say, "No, are you insane? Why would I go in there?" Apparently she was trying to find an explanation, because I found out in the days later she followed what she thought was me into the shower room, and this figure was nowhere to be seen. Lastly, something not involving me again. My two cousins were from two different sides of the family, and they didn't know each other all that well. So the last night we were there, my cousin, we'll call her Carrie, wakes up in bed, and the sun is beginning to rise. She turns over to see my other cousin Jose sitting in a chair listening to headphones staring out the window. She turns back to try and fall asleep, but she can't. She feels uncomfortable since they don't know each other all that well. She turns back and he's completely gone, like he had just vanished. Later on, it turned out he had never left his bed. He was still asleep. It would be best to leave out names of this story. Paraphernalia is involved. I won't go into much detail of any of that. Not that it was extreme or anything. For the sake of anyone involved, I will use fake names. Let's start over. Hello, my name is Tyler. I am a man. How old am I? Old enough to know better and still young enough not to care. That's my motto anyway, or it was until what I'm about to tell you happened. I personally do not do drugs. I don't judge nor do I care if you do them though. Whatever you do is your own business. Drinking though, I'm like a fish. I can hold my own against the best of drinkers. All of this is relevant to the story. Even though I don't indulge in mind-altering substances, I seem to hang with quite a few people who do. A friend of mine named Tommy called me, informing me of a crazy weekend-long party in the woods coming up. When my friends throw a party, it's always something that feels like an end-of-the-world event. It was late in the fall, in upstate New York. If you're unfamiliar with upstate New York, it's beautiful. Nothing except for woods in all directions. Lots of great camping areas. It's a nature lover's paradise. I am 6'3" and at the time I was a good 270 pounds. I got my truck ready. I have a Chevy 2500. I cleaned my truck and got it ready to sleep in. I like camping, but I hate sleeping on the ground. So I put 2 cot mattresses in the back with 3 pillows and 2 comforters, filled my coolers up with food, and got the heck out of there. I said see you later to my father and hit the road. It was about 6 p.m. when I showed up. Yeah, I enjoy being fashionably late. I am not afraid of hard work, but I had no idea if I planned to stay the whole time, so I wasn't about to set up all my stuff. The area in question was down a dirt roadway off the beaten path. A small open area of trees led to an open area surrounded by trees. When I got there, I was taken back. There had to be over 20 vehicles parked. There was also 10 porta-johns just past the cars on the left, next to the wall of trees. As I looked to the right, I could see a couple sitting around the area preparing a fire. Past that was a projector set up to make a makeshift widescreen. I was immediately hit in the face by a stench and a delicious smell at the same time. Pot smoke, and then sausages. I turned my head to the right more and saw that there were 2 grills going, and they were cooking sausages and burgers. Sure enough, there was a guy cooking on both with a stogie in his mouth. I made a sour face inside. Oh well, here we go again, dealing with my mentally suppressed friends and their enjoyment of something I still don't understand. Anyways, I pulled my truck in close to where the fire was, not giving a crap about how some guy was trying to tell me to park. I smiled as I slid out of my truck. Towering over him, I asked, "Do you want a cold beer? I don't feel like walking back and forth. and I'm not about to carry my cooler any further than I have to." He started laughing, shook my hand, and introduced himself as Roy. At that point, I realized I did not know any of these people. I handed him a beer, locked my truck, and went looking for Tommy. I found him finishing up his creation of the projector screen. I asked him what he had planned on showing. "Music, my good man. Gotta get the ladies in the mood for a good time." Tommy thinks he's a ladies' man. I humor him on it. He starts whatever he calls music and lights up a smoke. He informs me that way more people are coming and it's going to be a hell of a weekend. I light up a smoke and inform him that I'm only here for the ladies. He looked out and smiled at where I parked. "Good view from there," he says. Fishing with the right kind of bait, too. We both have a good laugh. Fast forward a few hours, it's about 11 p.m. None of the girls had really piqued my interest. I'm picky and have a type for the future Mrs. Tyler. I go back to my cooler and grab my Johnny Walker. I figured I might as well get myself toasty and pass out, then head home tomorrow. I turn back around and see a girl I had not seen before. She was talking with some of the other folks and joined a ring of people passing around a joint. I walked up to Tommy. Not even looking at him, I asked, "Dude, who's the girl in the pink leather jacket?" After what felt like 5 minutes, I turned to look at him with a serious look I get when I see something I want. He wasn't even paying attention. I asked him again, and he turned around to say, "What?" For the third time I asked him, "Who is the girl in the pink leather jacket?" Tommy replied, "I have no idea, man. I told y'all a lot of people were coming." So I gave him that look again, and he started laughing. I remember he was staring at something and asked him what he was staring at. He informed me that he saw something in the wood line, but it was probably the fire playing tricks with the shadows. It was loud with the music going. Everyone was feeling good. I shook it off and walked up to the girl in the pink leather jacket. I introduced myself and asked her name. She was gorgeous, long, dirty blonde hair, icy blue eyes with fair skin. She was kind of short. She fits most of my criteria, which were awesome. She turned to me and smiled. I could have melted right there. Then she said, "Wouldn't you like to know?" Attitude. Yep, I was smitten. We started talking some more. She was a bit strange, though. She kept staring off into space while we were talking. She kept pacing the conversation perfectly for someone who was on a mind-altering substance, while staring off into space. She stopped abruptly and walked over to the crowd of people I managed to pull her away from a few moments ago. So I joined them all as well. After about another hour of the group, it shifted into 3 separate units. The girl was happy to sit on my tailgate with me in our group. She kept her 100-yard stare going, though. Tommy pulled me aside and asked about it. I told him I had no idea, so he informed me that she was not the only weird person to show up this night. Even with his mental state, he knew not to just point at someone, so he nodded in the direction of a man. So I let him talk while I gave this man a once-over and made some monitoring of him. He was strange. He looked homeless. He barely spoke, awkwardly fumbling about. His clothes were dirty and his jacket was old and ragged. He had a vodka bottle in his right hand and would open the bottle to take a sip every so often. He kept saying something about having to go pee. It was probably 2 a.m. at this point. Tommy said something about everyone hitting the bathroom before he turned all the lights off. So the girls all went to the bathrooms in a herd and fast, all except for the girl in the pink jacket. She stayed sitting on my tailgate, so I joined her. I informed her that if she needed a bed, I had a spare one in the trunk with me. She would have her own bed and pillow and comforter. She smiled, pushed me onto my back and gave me a kiss I will never forget. She had been smoking and drinking all night, yet she tasted like a breath of fresh air, sweet and smooth. I was wide awake at this point. Most of the girls were making their way back to the tents. She said, "Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back." She rolled off of me, and the tailgate very fast. I was up fast and was looking to make sure she was okay. She did not even make a sound, and she was already walking toward the toilets. I had a great view of her walking away. As I smiled to myself, I noticed the weird guy with the vodka bottle, headed toward the toilets as well, about 20 feet behind her. I'm a chivalrous man, southern upbringing. So I then rolled off my tailgate. Nowhere as graceful as she was, though. I hit the ground and it hurt. I got up quickly and head over to the toilets, where she went and that man followed. Tommy stopped me to make sure I was okay. I was trying to hurry him up, as I did not want anything to happen to her. So when I made sure she was okay, in this stupor, I started walking very fast toward the toilets. I had all kind of bad mental images of what I would find when I got there. I was about 100 feet from the toilets when everyone was shaken to the core by a scream. It was not human. It sounded like the mixture of an animal and a man. The porta potties, which were in rows of 5, the back row closest to the trees, one was knocked over and there was blood everywhere. My gun was in my hand, and my flashlight was in the other. The last stall to the left of the 5 was where the blood trail started, leading to the woods. There was the vodka bottle completely whole. The smell of blood and rotting smell was filling my nose. The man's jacket was shredded in the trees and blood all over it. There was white and brown hair everywhere. I was sweating at this point, terrified. It all happened so fast. I saw the man's arm. It was covered in brown hair and was no longer attached to his body. I held back a gag reflex. As I did, a branch snapped. Instantaneously, the flashlight went toward the noise. I would make out what was left of the man's body. He was missing an arm, a hand, and his lower half. And finally, his head. Oh, that's not all. He had chunks ripped from what was left of him. What I can only describe as white fur had plunged through the sternum, covered in a thick black goo, almost like tar. I took all of this quickly, and then it hit me that whatever had done this had only left behind his torso, and that meant it must have been a sign that it was going to come from more people. The LED flashlight I had illuminated everything. I would have thought this was some kind of bear at first, tearing apart a robot if it was a science fiction movie. The most important thing hit me, just before the others were about 20 feet from me. This thing that had done this was wearing a pink leather jacket. I could make out the bottom right zipper and leather of the pink leather jacket as it held to the torso up to the hide. Just as everyone was about 5 feet from me, it sent the torso flying at me, sending me backward into everyone. What happened next was chaos, screaming, vomiting, running. The only person in their right mind was me, and even to me, none of this made any freaking sense. I was pushing people out of my way to get to my truck. I grabbed Tommy and carried him to my truck, throwing him inside through the driver's side door. Climbing inside, I heard what sounded like the lowest howl I've ever heard. It was a mixture of sadness and longing coming from the trees where the thing disappeared into. Tommy and I were on the highway and headed back to his place in a matter of minutes. He thanked me for getting him. I just shook my head. Neither of us slept that night. No one talked about it. When we went back that morning to get Tommy's car and all his stuff, there was nothing there to support that anything had happened at all. No blood on the ground, no parts in the woods, no ripped clothing. I have no idea what happened that night. I am by no way a layman to cryptids. This was not any stupid story designed to keep you from sleeping. This was me sharing something that happened to me with you. What was the girl in the pink jacket? The weird man in the ragged trench coat had all of this hair all over him. He smelled like feces and unwashed disgustingness. When his torso was thrown at me, it was hairy, and he bled black goo. There was also human-like red blood on the ground by the porta potties. For sanity's sake, maybe this was a Skinwalker. I am okay with saying that out loud. Sure, fine. But what was the girl in the pink leather jacket? Were they hurting each other? Were they working together? I have no idea, but I think something may be hunting Skinwalkers in northern New York. Thanks for listening to these creepy, allegedly true Skinwalker encounter stories. As always, these were sent in by viewers just like you. And if you have a story that you would like to hear on this show, be sure to submit it at swampdweller.net or the email you can find in the description down below. I would love to share your story with everyone here in the swamp. It's stories like yours that help keep these shows going. If you enjoyed these stories, it would mean a lot if you would hit that like button. It really does help me out in the YouTube algorithm. If you're new to the swamp, why not join us? hit that subscribe button, and don't forget to turn on notifications because I upload every single day just about, on all things natural and supernatural. If you want to bring your favorite Swamp Dweller scary stories with you everywhere you go, you can download them on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher Radio, and just about everywhere else you find podcasts online. And the best part is, it's 100% free. If you guys would like to support the Swamp outside of hitting that like button and subscribing, I'd really appreciate it if you check out the Swamp Dweller merch store. I have t-shirts, hoodies, mugs, and even face masks. I know we have to wear them out in public and some of us might not like it, but we might as well do it in style, right? I appreciate you guys so much. I'll see you guys soon with another creepy video.